Fáilte go dtí an ceiliúradh seo, ceiliúradh ar son agus de bharr an léach Celtach óg ó Carlow, Kevin Barry. When Danny Brown asked me if I knew of any plans to commemorate the centenary of the execution of Kevin Barry, he started us on a journey that led to this celebration of the Irish hero from County Carlow. I contacted County Librarian John Shortall to ask the same question. John's response and encouragement led me to Eddie MacDonald, Tony Malone and John Candy, collectors of books, songs and local lore. After much reading and internet browsing, the vision emerged of a celebration of Kevin Barry's life and death, and how his young life in Tombay and Rathvilly in County Carlow was influenced by the oral tradition of history, lore, story and song, as the culture was passed from one generation to the next. This resulted in the essay that is the roadmap for the journey. The next part of the journey led to meeting Ollie Hennessy and Olivia Smith. Ollie's reputation as a musical director is well recognised, including at national level. His soundtrack in this production is indicative of his talent. Olivia's skill as a creative and imaginative stage director and producer is also nationally recognised. She transformed the essay text into a piece of memorable drama. We then identified the cast who would present the performance. Mary Butler of Carlow, Lee Murphy of Rathvilly, Tony Malone of Kildare and Carlow, and Paddy Lawless of Burris are all well-known singers in their local areas. All were only too happy to engage with the celebration of the life and death of one of our own heroes. All connected with the journey are either from or deeply rooted in Carlow. 3 more Carlow actors later joined: Cian Kelly, Killian McGrath and Darren Smith. Grandsons of the present Kevin Barry, Ryan and Chris, joined us in visual. Our first plan was to present a live performance of the celebration in Rathvilly, in Newtown and in visual. Mr. COVID put a stop to that, at least for the present. We decided then to use modern media and technology to stream the performance that is now ready for present enjoyment and for future archiving. The internationally renowned musician and performer Orla Fallon, also from Carlow, came on board the journey at this point. Likewise, Greg Meinhardt of Hedgehog Productions and Frank McGing, recording engineer, joined the journey. Throughout the journey, from an early stage, the Barry family of Tombay was most supportive and helpful, especially Kevin's nephew, the current Kevin, son of Mick Barry, and his daughter Niamh. P.L. Curran of St. Lawrence O'Toole's Athletic Club and Danny Barron of Carlow International English Language School made their facilities available to us for rehearsals. These took place over a period of 8 weeks before filming in Tombay, in the County Library and in visual. Paul Maguire of the Military Museum was most helpful with the props we needed, as was John McDarby of County Carlow Museum and the Capuchins of Dublin Street. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the support provided by Carlow County Council and the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media. The production was funded under the Decade of Centenaries programme, and a special thanks to Councillor Charlie Murphy and the Carlow County Council Decade of Centenaries Committee. Pat Delaney, Head of Finance, John Shortall, County Librarian, and Visual Centre for Contemporary Art and G.B. Shaw Theatre, who facilitated our work in developing the project. Throughout the journey, John was our logistics road manager, linking all involved and editing the commemorative booklet. Copies of this booklet will be presented to all schools in the county. It has been a privilege to work with such a talented group of people, amateur and professional alike. While the learning and rehearsal was serious and progress was clear, there was always a sense of fun within the group, indicative of the enjoyment that we all experienced during the project. The Barry family, especially Kevin and Niamh, were most friendly, courteous and helpful during the journey. Most of all, it has been an honour to explore how the oral tradition helped to shape the thinking of a young man, scarcely out of boyhood, who gave up a rich and promising life for the principle of liberty, liberty of mind as well as physical, in the spirit of true republicanism. It is fitting that we in Carlow celebrate the life and death of our own countyman, Kevin Barry. Tá súlagam go minic sibh tanmh as an gcéilleora.
I've a sad but true story to relate of a brave young Irishman's cruel fate. It is written down in the roll of fame, and Kevin Barry is the brave lad's name. On January the 20th, 1902, Kevin Barry was born in Hollow Street Hospital in Dublin. His mother, Mary Dowling, his father, Tom Barry, from Tombay, Rathvilly. In 1908, Tom died and Mary moved Kevin and his younger siblings back to Tombay. Kevin went to Rathvilly National School, where the principal was Ned O'Toole. In 1915, Kevin visited Manchester with his mother. He was moved by the memorial to the Manchester martyrs, and with his sister Cathy, he attended a memorial lecture on the martyrs' commemoration in the Mansion House. This also moved him greatly. In 1917, as a student in Centenaries College, Rathmines, he moved to Belvedere College, Dublin, and joined the Irish Volunteers. Between 1917 and 1919, he rose through the ranks of the Volunteers and he saw active service. In 1919, he got a scholarship to study medicine in UCD, and in the summer of 1920, he worked on the farm in Tombay, helping his brother Mick. He negotiated with the local IRA unit to save Ochilvana House from burning. On September the 20th, 1920, he joined a raid for arms in which 3 soldiers were killed. Kevin was captured. On October the 20th, 1920, he was tried by court-martial for murder. Kevin refused to recognize the court, but he was found guilty and sentenced to death. On November the 1st, 1920, he was executed by hanging, despite many efforts for reprieve in Dublin, London, Washington, and even the Vatican. He was buried in the grounds of Mountjoy Prison. And on the 14th of October 2001, after 81 years interred within prison walls, Kevin was reburied, one of the forgotten 10, in Glasnevin Cemetery with full state funeral.
In Mountjoy Jail one Monday morning, high upon the gallows tree, Kevin Barry gave his young life for the cause of liberty. Just a lad of 18 summers, yet there's no one can deny, as he walked to death that morning, he proudly held his head up high. Just before he faced the hangman in his dreary prison cell, British soldiers tortured Barry just because he would not tell the names of his brave comrades and other things they wish to know. Turn informer and we'll free you, Kevin proudly answered no. Shoot me like a soldier, do not hang me like a dog, for I fought for dear old Ireland on that still September morn. All around that little bakery where we fought them hand to hand, oh, shoot me like a soldier, for I fought for Ireland. Kevin Barry, you must leave us, on the scaffold you must die, cried his broken-hearted mother as she bade her son goodbye, turning to her saying, "Oh, mother, do not weep, for it's all for dear old Ireland, and it's all for freedom's sake." Calmly standing to attention as he bade his last farewell to his broken-hearted mother, who sad grief no one could tell, for the cause he proudly cherished, this sad parting had to be. Then to death walked smiling sweetly, that old Ireland might be free. Another martyr for old Ireland, another murder for the crown. British laws may crush the Irish, they cannot keep her spirits down. Lads like Barry are no coward, from their foes they will not fly. Lads like Barry will free Ireland, and for her sake they live and die.
Siad a bheith uire talán de grasta tá tíornal is fanna hu uire man agus is fanna torrid of rinne íasta.
And ever walk in the back of the news, of it a roar our voice. Amen.
Siad a bheith uire talán de grasta tá tíornal is fanna hu uire man agus is fanna torrid of rinne íasta.
And ever walk in the back of the news, of it a roar our voice. Amen.
Dramatic scenes at Irish execution. Kevin Barry, the 18-year-old medical student, was hanged at Mountjoy Prison, Dublin yesterday. Dramatic scenes were witnessed outside the prison. As early as 7 o'clock, a crowd of over 5,000 recited prayers for the dying. When the death bell tolled, the rosary was recited in Irish. Daughters of Aaron, some of them wearing green uniforms, reciting the rosary in Irish outside the prison early yesterday morning.
Powerful ballad telling a powerful story. The song was written by an Irish immigrant in Glasgow shortly after Kevin's execution. And history tells us that the song became so popular in Ireland that British troops would punish anyone heard singing or even whistling it. Kevin Barry's character, principles, courage, and ultimately his sacrifice are written into the pages of history amongst the lyrics of Kevin Barry and many other such compositions. Such was the power of the Irish rebel song. There is a long tradition of rebel music, stories and poetry throughout Irish history. And Doyle and Foyle quote no less an observer than Queen Elizabeth I.
We shall never conquer Ireland while the bards are there.
At times of great hardships and oppression, in times of solidarity and loyalty, at times when heroes needed to be praised and remembered, when tales of risings, rebellions, tyranny and freedom needed wings, it was to the oral tradition of song, story and poetry that the Irish turned. As Diarmaid Ferriter observed,
songs always fill vacuums that are left by silence.
We can assume that over a century ago, Kevin Barry had listened to and no doubt sang such songs and regaled in such stories, little realising that he himself would provide inspiration for one of the most powerful ballads of liberty and the rights of man of all time. In 1910 to 1920, which songs and poems and stories did Kevin Barry hear? What was the oral tradition Kevin grew up with? Had that oral tradition any influence on Kevin Barry? What do we know?
His comments and letters tell us a lot about him, as do what we learn from his family and friends. So, we must look there to seek the sources that influenced Kevin. Family, school, local lore and history, music, song and dance.
His sister Catty, Kitby as she was known, she influenced his thinking greatly. She worked alongside Countess Markievicz. She was involved at the highest level of Republican life in Ireland and was close to the most senior Republicans, including Michael Collins and De Valera, who often used the Tom Bay House as a safe house.
His attendance with Sister Cathy at the Manchester Martyrs commemoration concert in 1915 was influential in him joining Na Fianna.
The stories of his ancestors, their heroic deeds, their struggles and acts of patriotism greatly influenced young Kevin. His mother, Mary née Dowling, lost two ancestors in the 1798 Battle of Hackettstown. Michael Dwyer, the Wicklow rebel, was also a relative.
Kevin would have heard the stories and songs of his family connections, as well as countless more, in the Rambling House sessions, which were a frequent occurrence in the parlour of the family home in Tombay, Rathvilly. Kevin's nephew, Donal O'Donovan, tells us that Kevin was nurtured on tales of the Battle of Hackettstown, the pursuit of Michael Dwyer in the Wicklow Mountains, the hounding to death of Charles Stewart Parnell, and the vivid recollections of Kate Kinsella.
Kate Kinsella, the housekeeper and our Dublin house and family friend, influenced Kevin with her rebel connections and stories. She had the songs about the United Irishmen and the Fenians. And in her company, Kevin would have been highly immersed in such songs as you will hear shortly.
The themes of the songs and stories he heard as he grew contributed greatly, therefore, to shaping the thinking of the young Kevin. Themes such as liberty, state violence, the agrarian struggles, evictions, loyalty and treachery and religion, patriotism.
The history, music and Irish curricula taught by Ned O'Toole, his principal in Rathvilly National School, would have similar themes, songs and stories.
We know he played rugby and hurling, several forties captured him on the playing field, including a forward run in Lansdowne Road. He was a team player in Lyle. He loved a few drinks with his friends and dancing with the ladies.
He was popular with his friends and he was liked by students and staff in school. In his short time with the Christian Brothers, before he moved to Belvedere College in 1917, we can wonder what songs and stories he would have heard about heroic deeds and the struggle for liberty.
He had a promising medical career before him, as well as potential for a political career.
So why did he gladly give it all away? Why sacrifice such a full and promising life for Ireland? What influenced the boy and made the man? Who better to ask than his nephew, Kevin Barry? Kevin, it's great to be back here in Tombay in the Barry homestead again. And in our earlier chat, you mentioned that an awful lot of the people in this local area might have been illiterate, or that back in your Uncle Kevin's time, and that most of the news was read up at the crossroads from the Nationalist.
Yeah, well, yes, Nationalist, yeah. It was purchased in the towns around, but it was read at the crossroads over there, just about less than half a mile from here.
Yes.
A group would gather there on Saturday, Sunday evening, and somebody would take the paper and read it from the front to the very back. There was nothing lost, everything was read. And it's from what the reports of things in that area at the time.
What other forms of information would people have had of the local goings on at the time?
Well, I suppose they'd go to the Rambling House and places like that, and there'd be discussions and things about things.
Yes.
And they'd get their information from there.
Yes. And you had a man working here at the time, or your dad, Michael, known as Mick, he would have had a man, Dinny Kelly.
Dinny Kelly, that's right, from the Taco Crash.
He would have had stories and songs at the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wouldn't say they were all true now.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. Kevin would have heard a lot of the songs of that era in rambling houses and etc.
Yeah.
Where would that have been, Kevin?
Oh, I suppose there are a few houses around all right, but there were a good many soldier songs at that time as well. And they impressed him greatly. Boys of Wexford and these kind of songs kept them going.
Yes,
Yeah.
and, yes, indeed. What were his thoughts or your dad's thoughts of your granny, Mary, at the time?
Oh, sure, he would have been very much put out about her. Yeah, because she went through so much.
Suffered a lot.
Yeah. She was a quiet woman, small in stature, and she lived in Moulded Street in Dublin. And I never heard a cross word out of her.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
The Dowlings of Drumgoyne, that was Kevin's mother's
Yes.
people. They were involved in a fair amount of in that generation, a fair amount of protests and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It was in the family and in the in-laws as well. Well, they were always interested in any kind of struggle that pointed to freedom. And those that were involved in it, they admired them greatly. Taught a lot of freedom, what freedom meant.
What were your thoughts of your father?
I loved him. He was a great man. Oh, sure, he was a lovely gentleman, gentle person, and you couldn't but like him as you were speaking to him. But that means that he wouldn't let you away with certain things. He'd bring out which he thought was the correct thing, or the correct way of saying that.
Your dad didn't talk an awful lot about your Uncle Kevin, but yet he became emotional, did he, when he did speak?
Oh, very emotional. Yeah, yeah.
Why do you think that was, Kevin?
Well, I suppose he saw what he'd gone through and suffered a lot.
Yes.
In the upheaval that was involved up to his hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kathy, or Kitby as she was known, Kevin's sister, what were the memories of her now like in the Barry?
Oh, she was
house?
a very tough woman.
Was she really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing was lost with her. Oh, she was well able for anyone.
Was she?
She was.
Yes.
I wasn't a bit ashamed to let him have it.
Kate Kinsella then, had she a big influence on the whole struggle for liberty and that within the Barry family?
She had,
yes.
Yeah. I think she was part of a group of people who were involved in things way back in 1800 and something.
There was various people that passed through the house. This would have been considered a safe house, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, in the time.
Yeah.
And who were the famous people that would have passed through, Kevin, or some of them?
Well, Dave was one anyway.
Right. And did De Valera actually stay here in the house?
He did. He stayed in the far room there.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
known as Dave's room.
What are the recollections of the family about De Valera?
They didn't think that he was an exceptional person.
I see.
They just took him as he came and went,
Yes.
and that was it.
There would have been a lot of connections then with other people such as Michael Collins and Countess Markovich and that, would there?
Yes, there was a certain amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And another famous man that came here and stayed here was Patrick Kavanagh, the poet.
That's right. He didn't stay. No, he was here for a day on a Sunday visitor kind of thing. He was a tough fella, tough kind of fella. Nice, but tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
On the morning of Kevin's execution in Mountjoy, what are the thoughts of the family about that time?
Oh God, they were extremely sorrowful about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because there was no coming back from it.
Of course. The morning of his execution was, as we all know from the song in Mountjoy Jail one Monday morning. Mass was celebrated in Hackettstown even though it was Monday morning, is that correct?
Yes, 8 o'clock Mass.
Yes, and what are your memories from what your dad and all would have told you about that?
Yeah, well, there was about up to 30 people or 40 arrived at their old gate above.
Just up here where we came in this morning, yes.
And they knelt down and said prayers for Kevin.
Well, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you here again today in the Barry homestead here in Tambay, and I have to say it has been a privilege for me to be here with you today, and thank you so much. You're an absolute gentleman. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. It was through the oral tradition that so much of our history, culture and heritage was passed down from one generation to the next, in rambling houses, impromptu gatherings and the like. And it's difficult to say exactly what songs were most popular at the time, but we can make very good guesses based on the songs that have survived to this day in the minds, the mouths and ears of the people, particularly in the minds of those who keep the tradition of the rambling house alive in 2020. Take, for example, Dunlavin Green. It tells a story of betrayal, brutality, of state violence. It is designed to provoke and intimidate, a call for revenge. Its purpose is to influence. It's likely that Kevin Barry knew it well.
In the year of 1798, a sorrowful tale, the truth unto you I'll relate, of 36 heroes. To the world they were left to be seen by false information. They were shot on Dunlavin Green. Bad luck to you, Saunders, you did their lives betray. You said a parade would be held on that very day. Oh, the drums they did rattle, and the fifes they did sweetly play. Surrounded we were, and quietly marched away. Quite easy they led us, as prisoners through the town, to be shot on the plain. We then were forced to kneel down. Such grief and such sorrow was never before there seen, as the blood ran in streams down the dikes of Dunlavin Green. There is young Matty Farrell, who has plenty of cause to complain. Likewise the two Duffys, who were shot down on the plain, and young Andy Ryan, whose mother distracted will run for the loss of her own darling boy, her eldest son. Bad luck to you, Saunders, may bad luck never you shun, that the widow's curse, it might melt you like snow in the sun. The cries of those orphans, whose murmurs you can never screen, for the loss of their own dear fathers who died on the green. Some of our boys to the hills have run away. More of them have been shot, and some have gone out to sea. Michael Dwyer from the mountain has plenty of cause for the spleen, for the loss of his own dear comrades who died on the green.
When it was dangerous or unpopular to talk or write publicly about certain events, when official history was silent, the oral tradition, the songs and stories sung and told around the firesides, retold the stories of history from the points of view of the people themselves. Singer and collector Frank Hart observed,
"The people in power write the history, and the people who suffer write the songs."
If we explore the themes of these songs and stories in greater detail, we see a pattern of themes emerge that in no small way shaped the character of Kevin and many other young people of his generation.
Liberty,
Loyalty,
Patriotism, equality,
republicanism,
non-sectarianism,
fraternity, martyrdom.
The themes derived from our long history of suppression, rebellion and agrarian injustices certainly gave rise to the Land War and the struggle for land reform in Ireland. However, in the late 18th century, other nation voices began to rise in the struggle to achieve human rights and national independence, and so shared in these themes of liberty, equality, democracy, fraternity and republicanism. These were the founding principles of the United States of America's War of Independence in 1776. They became the ideals of the French Revolution in 1789. They sparked new hope in the hearts of the United Irishmen in 1791. The Society of United Irishmen, the leaders of the 1798 rebellion, bravely unfurled the green flag, boldly dismissing the image of the imperial crown topping the harp, and loudly proclaimed that their harp was new strung and shall be heard, and defiantly adorned it with the cap of liberty. The harp that once through Tara's halls the soul of music shared, now hangs as mute on Tara's walls as if that soul were fled. So sleeps the prey of former days, so glory's lilies o'er, and hearts that once beat high for praise now feel that pulse no more. Lord, to chiefs and ladies bright, the harp of Tara swells. The chord alone that breaks at night its tale of ruin tells. As freedom now so seldom waits, the only throb she gives is when some heart indignant breaks to show that she still lives.
Neither Catholic, Protestant nor dissenter, but Irishmen.
It's interesting to note that Washington acknowledged that it was the men of the Irish brigades who sustained the struggle until the tide of battle turned in favour of the Americans. Lines from some of the marching songs of the Irish brigades, who contributed so well to the success of the American War of Independence, arose from and echoed these same themes.
When the Prince of Wales came over here and made a hubbub, oh, everybody turned out, you know, in gold and tinsel too. But then the good old 69th didn't like these lords or peers. They wouldn't give a damn for kings, the Irish volunteers. We love the land of liberty, its laws we will revere, but the divil take nobility, says the Irish volunteer.
The tyrant I'll still be defying, for the flag of the free I was fighting.
These shared principles, fundamentally the rights of man, when fused with the local and specific causes in America, in France and Ireland, became the messages and themes in the songs and the stories that were handed down and that shaped the thinking of young Irish men and women through all the generations, including Kevin Barry and his peers.
The works of the writer P.J. McCall probably best illustrate the themes. Like Kevin Barry, the young McCall heard the same themes and principles in the oral tradition in East Carlow, his father's place of origin. And also around the firesides, he would have heard songs and stories of South Wexford, that was his mother's homeland.
McCall had the gift of being able to express the peasant memories of 1798, as Liam Gall called them, in song and in story, probably better than any other writer. Gall claims McCall's songs inspired many young men to join in the struggle. The question might well be asked if the lofty aims of the rights of man have been achieved anywhere in the world, including America, France, and Ireland. Have we really achieved the liberty of mind and body that so many have struggled to achieve? Today's news reports from across the world would suggest that there is still a long road to travel.
Those who seek liberty of mind and body in today's world continue to need heroes such as Kevin Barry to inspire them in their efforts.
Liberty.
The oral tradition vocalises the struggle for freedom and liberty.
Hurrah, me boys, for freedom.
The blessed star of liberty.
Tyrant might has conquered right.
Fight for freedom.
For Ireland's freedom, we'll fight or die.
I gave up my life to make Ireland free.
Liberty. The central dream was the right of every person to personal freedom, freedom of mind as well as physical, to exercise personal choice. This was a major departure from the ancient feudal aristocratic system of hierarchical class. The ruling classes used brutal force to maintain their hold on power on the bodies and the minds of the people. And this lack of liberty led to so many of the social problems that oppressed the majority of the people for the benefit of the aristocratic few of the nobility. The songs and stories narrate the struggle for liberty and commemorate the brave who fought for it.
Robert Emmet rebelled in 1803 under the green flag with the golden harp and Éireann go bragh, Ireland forever, boldly depicted on it. Though defeated, though liberty was proving elusive, the themes of the song, bold Robert Emmet provided encouragement and inspiration to continue the fight for liberty, heroic patriotism, bravery, martyrdom, brutality, no treachery.
The struggle is over, the boys are defeated. All Ireland is surrounded by sorrow and gloom. We were defeated and shamefully treated, and I, Robert Emmet, awaiting my doom. Hung, drawn and quartered, now that was my sentence, but soon I will show them no coward am I. My crime is the love of the land I was born in. A hero I've lived, and a hero I'll die. Bold Robert Emmet, the darling of Erin, bold Robert Emmet will die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle. The bark lay at anchor, awaiting to bring me over the billows to the land of the free. But I must see my sweetheart, she is waiting to greet me, and with her I will sail far over the sea. I was arrested and cast into prison, tried as a traitor, a rebel, a spy, but no one can call me a knave or a coward. A hero I've lived, and a hero I'll die. Bold Robert Emmet, the darling of Erin, bold Robert Emmet will die with a smile. Farewell, companions, both loyal and daring. I lay down my life for the Emerald Isle. Hark the bells tolling, I well know the meaning. My poor heart tells me it is my death knell. In come the clergy, the water is leading. I have no friends here to bid me farewell. Goodbye, old Ireland, my parents, my sweetheart, companions in arms, to forget you must try. I'm proud of the honour, it was only my duty. A hero I've lived, and a hero I'll die.
Kevin Barry was very much on the side of the people, on the side of liberty of body as well as mind. He was aware, for example, of the injustices practiced on rural dwellers, with absentee landlords, rack renting and eviction. But he was also acutely aware of the hardships that were inflicted on urban workers in Dublin. In an essay while written at Belvedere College in 1919, aged just 17 years, on the subject of industrialist unrest, he wrote,
"We are today passing through a crisis which is unparalleled in the history of the world. It is the culmination of 4 years of starvation, privation and misgovernment. It is the nemesis which awaited war profiteers, place hunters and grasping capitalists. It is probably the beginning of the end of aristocracy."
Equality.
Kings in power and preaching drones are the cause of all your heavy groans.
People oppressed rose up in defence.
Government of the people, by the people, from the people.
Kevin was very aware of the injustices that permeated Irish life. He sought justice and equality.
The advocates of the rights of man favoured a meritocracy, a society where rank and status were defined by ability and achievement rather than by birthright and privilege. The concept of the divine right of kings and its resulting class system was to be replaced, at least in theory, by republicanism and meritorious democracy.
Fraternity.
Unmindful of names or distinction they came, for free men like brothers agree.
Farewell companions, both loyal and daring.
British soldiers tortured Barry just because he would not tell the names of his brave comrades and other things they wished to know.
Kevin Barry resisted fear and bribery, even in the face of death. He refused to betray his brothers and sisters.
Fraternity suggested that the nation's citizens were bound together in solidarity. It combined nationalism with love and concern for one's fellow citizens. The opposite to brotherhood was the treachery that was generated when neighbours or even family members betray their own, either through fear or through the bribery of the authorities. The holders of power tried by every means to maintain that power, including the use of torture or bribery to gather information on people with thoughts of rebellion against the ruling regime, with major social consequences. The songs and stories tell of loyalty and treachery.
Communities and families were split apart.
Death to every foe and traitor.
My own first cousin did me betray.
Her heart pierced by traitors and slaves.
Bad luck to you, Saunders, you did their lives betray.
Fearless brethren in valor's fight.
Those suspected of bribery and treachery were harshly treated, and those who had the courage to resist were regarded as heroes. Kevin Barry was the latter.
Turn informer and we'll free you. Kevin proudly answered no.
The definition of patriotism changed to fighting for a cause, for principles, and for one's fellow man rather than for the feudal lord or king or queen. Such a cause became sacred in itself and therefore easy to link to the concept of martyrdom. The songs and stories fueled the hearts of patriot minds.
Patriotism.
He goes to meet the martyr's fate.
For Ireland's freedom, we fight or die.
Let me carry your cross for Ireland, Lord.
I am proud of the honour. It was only my duty. A hero I've lived and a hero I'll die.
Many of the songs of heroes who died record them as martyrs for the cause. P.J. McCall penned many such songs, including Follow Me Up to Carlow, Kelly the Boy from Killan, and one of the most famous of all, Moulded. And in this ballad we find the themes of patriotism and martyrdom for the cause of liberty. For Ireland's freedom, we fight or die.
As the sun was setting o'er the bright May meadows of Shelton Hill, a rebel hem set the heather blazing and brought the neighbours from far and near. Then Father Murphy from old Kilcormac spurred up the rocks with a warning cry. Arm, arm, he cried, for I've come to lead you for Ireland's freedom will fight or die. He led us on towards the coming soldiers, the cowardly men we put to flight. 'Twas at the Harrow the boys of Wexford showed Bookie's regiment how men should fight. Look out for hirelings, King George of England, search every kingdom where breed is slain. For Father Murphy from the county Wexford sweeps o'er the land like a mighty wave. We took Camaraderie and Enniscorthy, and Wexford storming drove out our foes. 'Twas at Slieve-Quilta our pikes were reeking with the crimson blood of the beaten yos. At Tubber and Earing and Ballyellis full many a Hessian lay in his goal. Our Father Murphy had it come over, the green flag floated from shore to shore. At Vinegar Hill, o'er the pleasant Slaney, our heroes bravely fought back to back, and the Yos of Carlow took Father Murphy and burned his body upon the Rhine. God grant you glory, brave Father Murphy, and open heaven to all your men. For the cause that called you may call tomorrow in another fight for the green again. For that cause that called you may call tomorrow in another fight for the green again.
Ruth Dudley Edwards refers to
a generation trained to the missionary ideals of self-sacrifice.
Kevin White quotes Kevin Barry's mother Mary on the eve of her son's execution.
My son is proud to die for the Republic.
Kevin chose to die for the cause he believed in.
Mind, there's to be no appeal.
His patriotism is nowhere more evident than in one of his final letters.
I will go to the gallows as an Irishman with love in my heart for a free Ireland.
Linked to the old aristocratic system was the right to ownership of the land. When the feudal lord owned the land, his tenants were at his whim, and of course this led to many abuses of the landlord system and gave rise to the agrarian struggles for a fairer system of ownership. In turn, this led to the rack rent abuses and to the evictions that tormented so many peasants over the years. This struggle was to be hard won and still runs close to the surface of Irish rural life. The agrarian struggle was well represented in story and song.
Kevin Barry would have heard of the agrarian outrages inflicted on the peasant tenant farmers by oppressive landlords and their agents in the localities close to Rathvilly, as well as the songs of '98 and of the Fenians.
The struggle for freedom resulted in many atrocities across the centuries, as the British and their agents sought to maintain their rule by force and intimidation. Oppression, frustration and example led insurgents to practice violence also, and in many cases it was the women and children who suffered as collateral damage.
Then burst wars, red lightning.
As the blood ran in streams down the dykes of Dunlavin Green.
We were defeated and shamefully treated.
The cries of those orphans, whose murmurs you can never screen.
Stripped naked, hung high on a cross.
They slew the weak and helpless in their ardour for the king.
The poor and the guiltless, with bigotry sword, were butchered like sheep in the name of the Lord.
It was not only the men who were prepared to fight for liberty and freedom. Take Teresa Malone from Kilcumney in South Carlow. She was one of the heroines.
'Twas in the year of 98, a time of blood and woe, when many's a Saxon quailed beneath the rebels' vengeful blow. The English troops were forced to fly like chaff before the gale, when they heard the dreaded war cry of the sons of Granuaile. On June the 6th and 28th, I hear the old men say, the Battle of Kilcumney was fought and lost that day. The rebels they were routed, though they fought with right goodwill, and many's the pikeman wandered that night upon the hill. The sun was shining brightly on that summer's afternoon, like burnished gold it glistened on each helmeted dragoon. 9 mounted ancient Britain troops stood at John Murphy's gate. They burst the wicket open, no answer would they wait. 4 were posted outside, and the other 5 within. With short delay their hellish work those tyrants did begin. Heeding not the women's cries, they struck the ready match, and soon the blazes mounted high from rafters, beam and thatch. Grimly smiled those bloodhounds, on each bearded face a grin, little thinking of the deadly foe that lay concealed within. 4 of Wexford's bravest boys, when ended was the fray, sought shelter in the barn and hid beneath the hay. The leader of those Wexford boys, he peeped out from the door. 9 English troopers are without, within we've only 4. Many is the day we fought them boys, outnumbered 1 to 2. Another blow for freedom, and the barn door they brushed through. 5 horses without riders soon were prancing in the yard. The other 4 neath whip and spur were pressing fast and hard to gain the shelter of the camp in yonder vale below. Each head was turned to see if came the pikeman quick or slow. Then stepped a maiden from the house, her hair was raven black. She picked up a trooper's pistol and jumped on a horse's back. as swift as e'er a racehorse yet was by a jockey rode. She spurred a noble charger down the Ballyellen road, until she came beside a stream that ripples by the mill. When turning round she saw full close beside her on the hill one of those ancient Britain troops, commanding her to stand. She gave him ready answer with the pistol in her hand. O'er then she dashed, o'er ditch and den, until she reached the heights where the rebel silent watchfires were burning through the night. Through shady groves and ivy trees the frightened birds had flown, and they heard the cheers that greeted Teresa Malone. She sleeps beneath the cold sod in Ballinkillen chapel yard. She saw the dawning of the day that nothing can retard. She lived till old, she passed away. Peace to her soul, we pray. We've maidens yet, thank God, like her, and plenty here today.
While the European movement for the rights of man was largely anti-clerical, as was the American movement, in Ireland there was a closer relationship between the Catholic Church and the movement towards freedom from oppression, even though most of the leaders of the United Irish movement were Protestant. It might be better to regard them as Christian rather than belonging to any sect of Christianity.
Many songs and stories carry Christian references.
We bless the holy cause.
A hymn of the dawn for the free.
God foster your manhood, souls robed in honour.
God grant you glory, brave Father Murphy.
The Barry family, while staunchly Catholic, were friendly to all denominations, Catholic, Protestant, and to those of no religious sect, both around Tombay and in their relationships with their Dublin neighbours.
It was these songs, poems and stories that were passed down from generation to generation with their themes of liberty and non-sectarian republicanism that shaped in no small way the mind and the principles of the young Kevin Barry. He heard these songs from his mother, from Kate Kinsella, from teachers at school in Rathvilly, and at the many singing sessions he attended, especially around the fire at the parlour in Tombay. His love of life and his courage to act for his principles were from within himself. And this combination of the two brought him to the scaffold on that morning of November the 1st, 1920.
Ye friends of Irish liberty and sons of Granuain, be not afraid of England's bull, his head, his horns are ta'en. 'Tis but a shadow on the grass, reflected from a tree. So cut the branches, bare brave boys, and plant a liberty. Eradicate the Saxon root, which soaks our native soil, and takes from us the flower and fruit of our forefathers' toil. We'll till the land whereon it stands, and plant another tree, whose
appellation ne'er demands the name of liberty. We don't forget our martyrs dead, Fitzgerald, Emmetone. We don't forget the latter yet, the last brave heroes gone. Yes, all who in Manchester died upon the gallows tree. Revenge me, boys, their mothers cried, and seek the liberty. We don't forget our brothers dear who are in prison cell, who are doomed to suffer most severe, where naught but hardship dwells. Condemned by bloody Britain's laws, in prison there to be, because of seeking for their rights, the cause of liberty. And now the day is just at hand, it o'er the billows dawn, whose brilliant sun shines on our lands, its meadows, woods and lawns, to drive the wolves and lions to their covert all to flee, while Aaron's sons with their swords and guns shall gain the liberty. With green flags fluttering from our staffs, when liberty we've seen, we'll write our martyrs' epitaphs on gold and marble stone. And Tara's harp that silent sleeps, well strung once more must be, and we will sing while Britain weeps for Ireland's liberty. Oh, liberty and freedom will surely on us smile, for we have set our country free, our own dear Emerald Isle. Oh, liberty and freedom implanted there must be, so cut the branches, break the roots, and plant the liberty. Oh, liberty and freedom implanted there must be, so cut the branches, break the roots, and plant the liberty.
It is correct to say that the oral tradition influenced Kevin Barry. It did influence the boy, and it did make the man. But let us find some unequivocal proof. According to the witness statement of Kathy, his sister, given in 1952 when she was visiting her brother in his cell, She had told him that his friends would be outside Mountjoy to pray the rosary for him. She remembers.
He became serious at once and he said, "Tell them that is foolish. They'll all be shot." For a few moments I couldn't speak because I suddenly thought, when they come up in the morning, he'll be alive as he is now. When they go away, he'll be dead forever. He was sitting with one leg over the other, and he suddenly began to swing his foot and whistle. "Steady, boys, and step together." And he gave me a sideways smile. So I started again, and gradually we were all talking quite naturally.
In his prison cell, when thoughts of his impending death proved difficult for his sister Kitby, he broke the silence and lifted the mood, focusing his thoughts and hers by whistling the tune "Steady, Boys, and Step Together" and offering her a sideways smile. What more proof does one need then? The oral tradition influenced Kevin Barry immensely. Before we finish, let's pose one more question by inverting this conclusion on its head. The oral tradition influenced Kevin Barry, but how did Kevin Barry influence the oral tradition? What was his legacy to that tradition? The writers of the many songs, poems and stories clearly saw Kevin as part of the ancient struggle for liberty, equality and fraternity, and they commemorated him as such.
There's a volume of songs, poems and stories dedicated to the memory and narrative of Kevin Barry. The writers of these many songs, poems and stories clearly saw him as an integral part of Ireland's ancient and ongoing struggle for liberty, equality and fraternity. The poem Kevin Barry, written by no less a person than Countess Markievicz, reflects the horror, disgust and anger that Kevin's execution generated at the time throughout Ireland and indeed all across the world.
We knelt at Mass with sobbing hearts, cold in the dawn of day. For us the dawn, for him the night, he was so young and gay. And from the altar spoke the priest. His voice ran thin with pain, bidding us pray. A boy will die at England's hands again. The cruel English tortured him. He never shrank or cried. Sublime his faith, the gallows tree, he faced that day with pride. Proudly he gave his life for her, to whom his heart was given. His dying eyes knew freedom near, saw death the gate of heaven. Bright flaming star of young life, simple, pure and brave, our childlike prayerful sacrifice, his end a felon's grave. His end, no end to lives like his, with us he lives always. Bright through the night, a shining star, he lights for us the way. And Christ, who died for love of us, tortured, bruised and shamed, gives courage to such hero souls, unbending and untamed.
The same feelings and perceptions of Kevin's death were reflected in a song written by another Carlow man, MC Nolan of Borris, The Martyrdom of Kevin Barry.
The mass bells loud one November morn, o'er Dublin city fair, rang out their message to mankind, and called them forth in prayer. Whilst they were wrong, a boy was hung upon the gallows high, because he strove for the cause we love, and died as the Irish died. No crime did stain his noble soul, to mar his memory's fame. He only stood for Erin's good, and the honour of her name. He did no wrong by hand or tongue, in fate his Saviour laid, for he went to his doom without fear or gloom, on the morn of All Saints' Day. As a rebel I fear not to die, for the land I love so well. My word I gave to my comrades brave, their names I ne'er would tell. For all the gold you British hold were offered to me even then, 10 times I would die on the gallows high, ere betray my fellow men. Thus spoke young Kevin Barry bold, as he stood there a prison bound. His savage foes with their cowardly blows, they felled them to the ground. In pain he lay, no word did say, nor mercy did he plead, for he showed the cause of the English foes, how Irishmen were made. No human plea did the tyrants heed, nor mercy did they show. To this child in years, through a mother's tears, for the fate of her son did flow. But though her heart would break to part with the lad she loved so well, she said when her love and honor showed to him in his prison cell, pride of my heart, oh, we must part, to meet no more on earth. Be proud to die an Irish boy, for the land that gave you birth. To our native land, our isle so grand, be noble, be true, be brave, for better to die a rebel boy than to live a coward and slave. And so it was a November morn, when the mass bells loud did ring, In dark Mountjoy this noble boy for Ireland's cause did swing. And so it was the heavy cross which Kevin Barry bore was ended upon All Saints' Day when he died for the Shamrock Show. And so it was the heavy cross which Kevin Barry bore was ended upon All Saints' Day when he died for the Shamrock Show.
The revulsion felt by the people at Kevin Barry's execution and the anger generated by it is clear. It fueled the fire of resistance to foreign rule and certainly advanced the cause for which he gave his life, Irish liberty.
Kevin Barry was a hero, another martyr to the cause of freedom for the people of Ireland. Freedom to think and choose about how they wished to live their lives in a democratic republic, released from the bonds of feudal aristocracy and its many abuses. Kevin Barry's life and death inspired people to action. Some fought with weapons and some fought with the pen. The latter, the Bards of Ireland, ensured the continuity of these themes and long-held principles in the oral tradition for future generations. Perhaps it's really only possible to appreciate Kevin's sacrifice and the legacy he has left if we hear it in his own words.
Father Albert had asked him for a message, and he said, "That is making such a fuss. I haven't any last messages." Father Albert pressed him.
I pressed him, and at last he said, "The only message I have for anybody is, hold on and stick to the Republic."
These were the actual words Father Albert heard, although later this last message was trimmed up in various ways. One of them was, "Live for the ideals for which I am about to die." Anything more foreign to Kevin's outlook is very difficult to imagine, but hold on and stick to the Republic was the very essence of him.
Kevin Barry's legacy to the oral tradition, the songs and poems written about Kevin Barry, added to the rich oral tradition that is our cultural heritage, one that is very much alive and well in Carlow, in the rambling houses and gatherings, and indeed in celebrations such as this one.
They shall be remembered forever. They shall be alive forever. They shall be speaking forever. The people shall hear them forever. I've a sad but true story to relate of a brave young Irishman's cruel fate. It is written down in the roll of fame, and Kevin Barry is the brave lad's name.